is it possible to, so let's say if I have the genetic predisposition for Alzheimer's, but I'm not that bad that an MRI is warranted, you can still do an assessment, a neurological assessment, to tell me that I have early stage Alzheimer's or not.
When we look at that, like as far as the diagnosis goes, you definitely have to do like neuropsychiatric testing and go see people that do that. We don't do that part. We look at more, how is your brain functioning, okay? So for example, if we have an intake form that basically itemizes all these different parts and regions of the brain, and one of them is the medial temporal lobe where the hippocampus lives, right? So like, for example, like, are you forgetting where you put your wallet, your phone, your keys? Are you chronically late, or you have a tough time with like sense of direction? For people's names with the face and all those kind of things. So those are all like medial temporal lobe symptoms. If you're marking, like, so ours is like 1, 2, 3, 4. You kind of grade it like 1 doesn't really happen, 4 happens all the time, right? If we're seeing a lot of 3s and 4s, that is basically, the history means something, right? It means that part of the brain's not functioning as well as it should be, especially if other people are starting to notice it. So how long does that have to last before it shows up as atrophy on the MRI of that part of the brain, which means that part of the brain shrunk? Well, it probably takes a while, right? So like, we've got taught like on different conditions that, some conditions it takes like 70 to 90% of that part of the brain to be gone before it shows up on. And like Parkinson's, right, like MS, where before that plaque actually shows up, how many neurons have to get injured to do that? Quite a few. MRI is anatomy, it's structure, right? So it's like, okay, all the pieces are in place. We don't see any disease process that we can identify in a vast majority of the cases, right? So, but that doesn't mean that if your cerebellum looks good, which is your balance center, right, of your brain, if that looks good on MRI, that doesn't mean you're good at balance, right? So that's where you have to be at, how does the brain function? Well, let's take a look, right? Let's do balance and coordination and gait and look at things like eye movements and stuff like that to see how different parts of the brain are working and functioning. You can still have headaches, you can still have balance problems, you can still have coordination issues or not be good at math or memory retention, and it doesn't mean that your MRI is going to show a lot. So we want people that have subjective complaints. Remember, the subjective part comes first, where the patient themselves notices they're not themselves. They're having a difficult time with certain things, right? Whether it's brain fog, reasoning, math comprehensive, calculation comprehension, reading comprehension, or like making a decision, certain short-term memory type things. And when we look at that, the patient notices it, but other people don't really notice it as much, and they can get around the world just fine. And then you look at mild cognitive impairment that comes a little bit later. And so we want to catch you when you yourself are feeling like you're just not yourself. We want to catch them early and try to evaluate risk factors. And we can't say that we treat or cure or prevent a disease or anything like that. But what we're trying to do is, we know the risk factors involved in Alzheimer's, and we know different parts of the brain and how they work. Can we evaluate risk factors and optimize them as much as possible, and then target the brain with different exercises that we know that stimulate that part of the brain?